Imagine this. Chopper, the lovable reindeer doctor from the One Piece world, is suddenly yanked away from his crew, ripped out of the Grand Line, and dropped into a mysterious, dark world. The Tower of God. Confused and disoriented, he stumbles into an unfamiliar environment where the rules are simple. Only the strong survive, and power is the ultimate currency. This new world is a far cry from the seas he's used to, and now he must rely on his wits, his heart, and his unique abilities to stay alive. But here's the twist. You know Chopper's monster point? The one that often scares him and his friends because of its uncontrolled nature? In the Tower of God, this form is the key to unlocking unimaginable power, but at a cost. What if Chopper is struggling to control his most dangerous form becomes the tower's greatest asset, or its most dangerous weapon? As Chopper navigates deadly trials, he uncovers dark secrets about the tower's true purpose, where each floor hides something more sinister than the last. Will Chopper make it to the top, where power beyond awaits, or break him before he even has a chance? Stick around, because the choice Chopper makes could change everything, both for him and the tower itself. Chopper had always been the smallest of the Straw Hats' crew, but his heart was as big as anyone's. He was used to facing danger, whether it was battling powerful sea kings or standing alongside his friends in the most perilous situations, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. One moment, he was on the Thousand Sunny working with a crew to prepare a meal, and the next, everything went dark. He was pulled from his world and thrust into a massive, towering structure, the Tower of God. The towering structure stretched impossibly high into the sky, filled with ominous energy that weighed heavily on him. The air around him felt strange, and the ground beneath his hooves felt unsteady, like he was standing on the edge of a precipice. Chopper's confusion only grew as he looked around. This wasn't the Grand Line. There were no pirates here, no familiar landmarks, just endless floors stretching higher and higher, each filled with an unknown danger. Before he could process it all, a cold voice echoed through the air, telling him that he had entered the tower and that his journey would soon begin. The rules here were simple: fight, survive, and climb higher, or face failure and be cast aside. Chopper's mind raced. Climb the tower? What did that even mean? All he wanted was to find a way back to his crew, but the overwhelming pressure of the tower's presence was enough to make him hesitate. Suddenly, the first trial began. The floor he landed on was an arena filled with monstrous creatures, twisted beasts that radiated malevolent energy. They were larger, faster, and stronger than anything Chopper had faced before. He tried to avoid confrontation, relying on his speed and agility, but the creatures closed in on him, forcing him to fight. Chopper had always relied on his medical knowledge and his ability to heal, but here, that wouldn't help him. This world was ruled by strength, and survival meant he had to fight back with everything he had. As the creatures closed in, Chopper's thoughts turned to his most dangerous form: Monster Point. For years, he had been afraid of losing control in this form. The overwhelming power it gave him was something he could barely manage. But now, it was the only way he could hope to survive. He closed his eyes and concentrated. The transformation began slowly, painfully, and for a moment, Chopper thought he might lose himself in the power. Slammed into the first monster, the force was enough to shatter it into pieces. He landed with a thud, breathing heavily but feeling more in control than he had ever done before. The remaining creatures hesitated, sensing this newfound power. With each strike, Chopper became more confident, realizing that his monster point wasn't a curse, it was a strength. The creatures fell one by one, unable to keep up with his speed and ferocity. Chopper stood victorious, his chest rising and falling as the last of the monsters disintegrated. His transformation faded, and he was left standing in an arena, surrounded by the remains of the creatures he had defeated. It was then that Chopper noticed the figure watching him from the distance. Fug, the mysterious faction that ran the tower's trials. The leader of Fug stepped forward with a cold smirk on his face as he observed Chopper's victory. "You're stronger than you look," he said, his voice chilling, "but don't get too comfortable. This is just the beginning." Chopper's heart raced. He had made it through the first trial, but the sense of unease was growing. There was something more to this tower, something hidden beneath its layers, and Chopper could sense that the deeper he went, the more he would have to rely on his newfound strength. But would it be enough to face the challenges ahead? Would he even be able to hold on to the part of himself that made him who he was? Kind, compassionate, and always ready to protect his friends? Or would the tower break him like so many before him? With that thought heavy on his mind, Chopper stepped forward, determined to climb higher, but fully aware that the road ahead would test him in ways he could never have imagined. The challenges were just beginning, and he had to be ready for whatever the tower threw his way. After surviving the first floor, Chopper found himself moving deeper into the tower, with each floor more difficult and dangerous than the last. He had made it through the initial test, but he knew the challenges awaiting him would be far from simple. Each step higher into the tower felt heavier, like the weight of unseen eyes were following him, assessing him, judging him, as if the tower itself was alive and aware of his every move. But the more he ascended, the more Chopper realized that this was not just a test of physical strength. It was a test of character, of his will to survive in a world that had no mercy for the weak. The second floor was no less brutal. Chopper was thrust into an arena again, but this time he wasn't alone. He was paired with another regular, a tall, quiet figure named Somi, who was skilled in hand-to-hand combat. She wasn't as strong as Chopper, but she had a sharp mind and a ruthless focus that impressed him. Together, they were tasked with taking down a powerful cursed creature, a giant serpent-like monster with glowing venomous fangs. Chopper had to fight alongside Somi, but as they clashed with the serpent, something unexpected happened. Somi betrayed him! The moment the creature was distracted, she attacked Chopper from behind, her fist connecting with his side with enough force to knock him off balance. She didn't say a word, but her eyes were cold, calculating. It wasn't about survival anymore, it was about power, and Somi had chosen her own survival over his. Chopper, stunned and hurt, tried to defend himself, but the blow had already left him vulnerable. The serpent, sensing weakness, lunged at Chopper with its massive jaws. It was only through sheer luck that Chopper managed to transform into Monster Point once again, slamming the serpent aside with a single, devastating kick. Breathing heavily, Chopper stood over the fallen monster, but his eyes were on Somi. She had used him, and he knew it, but there was something even more troubling. In the back of his mind, a voice whispered that this might be the way the tower worked. That in this world, survival didn't have room for kindness or empathy. In this place, only the strong survived. And that meant everyone was a potential enemy. It was a lesson Chopper hadn't expected to learn so soon, and it shook him to his core. He wasn't just fighting monsters anymore, he was fighting the very people around him. The ones who would stop at nothing to climb higher, to gain more power, and to crush anyone who stood in their way. In a world like this, Chopper's good nature felt like a liability. Could he afford to keep his heart open, or would the tower force him to close it forever? The aftermath of the betrayal was bitter. Somi, without a word of apology, simply walked away, leaving Chopper to deal with these serpents' remains and the wreckage of their failed alliance. For the first time since entering the tower, Chopper felt truly alone. It wasn't just the physical danger he was facing anymore, it was the moral weight of his decisions. Every step he took, every challenge he faced, seemed to demand more and more from him. Would he become like the others, cold and calculating, or would he hold on to the values that made him who he was? But even as these thoughts swirled in his mind, Chopper knew one thing. He couldn't afford to lose himself here. No matter how brutal the tower was, he would fight for the part of him that believed in kindness, in healing, and in protecting others. It wasn't just about climbing to the top, it was about why he was climbing. The next test arrived faster than he expected. This time, Chopper was pitted against a group of regulars, all of whom had been training in the tower for far longer than he had. They were faster, stronger, and more skilled. But Chopper had something they didn't. His unique ability to adapt and think on his feet. Using his medical knowledge and his newfound control over his monster point, Chopper began to turn the tide of the battle. outwitting and outmaneuvering his opponents. The fight was intense, but Chopper's creativity gave him the edge. His powerful kicks and sharp intellect, combined with his new understanding of the tower's rules, allowed him to defeat his opponents without completely destroying them. But as the battle ended and the dust settled, Chopper's thoughts returned to Somi's betrayal. He had been right to trust her, at least in the beginning, but in the end, she had proven that in this world, trust was a luxury few could afford. Survival was everything. That truth seemed to echo through the tower louder than any physical challenge he faced. And yet, Chopper refused to let it break him. His bond with his crew was unshakable, even if he was far from them. He wouldn't let the tower turn him into something he wasn't. Every victory in the tower wasn't just for survival, it was a step towards proving that even in the darkest, most dangerous places, kindness and compassion could still have a place. As he climbed the tower, Chopper realized that he wasn't just fighting to return home, he was fighting for the very essence of who he was, the part of him that believed in healing, that believed in fighting for what was right. The tower might break those who came before him, but it wouldn't break him, not unless he allowed it. The higher Chopper climbed, the more he realized that the tower wasn't just a place of trials, it was a place of secrets. The challenges were growing more difficult, and the people he encountered were becoming harder to trust. Each floor brought new dangers, both physical and psychological, but the real mystery of the tower was starting to unravel before him. Something was hidden, deep within its walls, something darker than any curse or beast he had faced so far. After surviving multiple brutal trials, Chopper found himself facing a new and unexpected adversary. A mysterious figure known as the Administrator. This person was rumored to hold the power to control the very essence of the tower, manipulating the trials and even the people within it. As Chopper ascended to the upper floors, he began to hear whispers, fragments of conversation from those who had been here longer, from those who seemed to know more than they let on. There were rumors that the tower itself was not a mere structure, but a living entity, feeding on the souls of its climbers, growing stronger with each soul it consumed. Chopper's instincts told him that this wasn't just about climbing the tower anymore. There was something far more sinister at play, something that tied into the very heart of the tower's existence, and as he moved closer to the top, it became clear that he was no longer just a regular competing for survival. He had become a piece in a much larger game, one that threatened to consume everything around him. The final floor loomed ahead, but as Chopper prepared for the ultimate trial, the atmosphere shifted. A chilling voice echoed through the hallways, a voice that he had heard only once before, faint but unmistakable. "Did you think you were the only one being tested, Chopper?" The voice sent a chill down his spine, and for a brief moment, Chopper froze. Who was that? Before he could react, the ground beneath him cracked open, revealing a hidden chamber below. The light that spilled from it was an eerie shade of green, casting long shadows across the walls. Chopper could sense that something was waiting for him down there, something important, something dangerous. This isn't just a trial. This is a choice. He hesitated. The path ahead seemed straightforward. Climb the tower, face the final challenge, and perhaps finally understand the true purpose of this world. But the mysterious voice, the sudden appearance of this hidden chamber, and the oppressive atmosphere made it clear. The tower wasn't done with him yet. In fact, it was only just beginning to show its true face. As Chopper stepped toward the opening, his heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination. This wasn't just a trial of strength, it was a trial of the very soul, and whatever awaited him below could either destroy him or unlock the truth he had been searching for. But as his hoof hovered above the dark abyss, the ground rumbled again, and for a split second he saw something, or someone, moving in the shadows below. "Come down, Chopper. The real game is about to begin." Suddenly, the walls around him began to close in, and the light from the chamber grew dimmer. Time was running out. Chopper took a breath and, with a final glance at the floor he had just ascended, stepped into the darkness. What was waiting for him? And who was behind the mysterious voice that seemed to know so much about him? Was the tower truly a place of testing? Or was there something deeper at play? Something far darker than he could have ever imagined? As the screen fades to black, the voice echoes one last time, leaving Chopper and the audience on the edges of their seat.